The real goal today is to not walk away with these 7 bullet points. It's not to walk away with a toolbox and think you've got everything. It's listen and take away what you need from the conversation, okay? We need to take fewer notes in life and listen more. Really participate. Now, how do you listen? For those people who raised their hands, who were the good listeners once again? All right. Introduce yourself, fine young lady in red, and tell me your name. Cheryl. Cheryl. And why are you a good listener? How are you a good listener?
I try to listen to what people say.
Yeah, that's a good start right there. How do you do it? Because a lot of people have trouble. How many people have trouble listening? Some of you didn't even hear that question, so we got that. So, how do you listen well? Does anybody have a tip on how you listen well? Oh, well, my good friend, your name, you do need a name. What? Barry. Barry? Okay, go Barry.
I think something that sometimes I have to really focus on is not working up a response, not thinking about what I'm going to say to them or not to say what I need to say, what I'm going to be important really.
That Barry is right on target. Did anybody hear what Barry had to say? Because this is a great piece of advice. Mary? Oh, Mary, sorry. It's acoustics. It's Come on, I'm an outsider. Give me a little bit. Mary. I'd like to call you Barry, though. That's why I'm doing that. In the ballpark. Cheryl, Jeremy, Amy. Okay. We're all together. It's a great point, and it's been proven neuroeconomically, and this is a fascinating piece of information for those who don't know it, that as we are speaking, you are completing my sentences, right? After a person says 2 words, you are already guessing the pattern of the sentence and completing the sentence for them. So it's been proven that we do that, and obviously it's sort of an instinctual thing because we're looking for what's new information. What do I actually have to pay attention to? So the first thing you have to do is break down that habit, right? Listen to every word that's being said because sometimes things can surprise you, right? That's often how you get into conversations where you think you've heard the whole sentence because you've heard a couple of words and you miss something really key from your mate in the conversation, right? Or from your boss, right? So this idea of not preparing what you're saying next is critical, Mary, Barry, whoever you claim to be now, Jerry. You have to be open to that. Now, when interviewing, I see this happen all the time. People will have a list of questions, and this is really a manifestation of that thing you're talking about there. People will have a list of questions and just be ready to ask the next question. It's number 2. I'm going for that, right? And they're not paying attention to the answer. A few years ago, I was at the Austin Film Festival, and I'm a regular speaker, presenter there, and I got to do some episodes of my TV show. They gave me sole access to some people like Oliver Stone and Cheryl Hines and all these people. Wonderful. Also got to speak to Terry George. I don't know if you know him, but he'd made the movie Hotel Rwanda years ago. And so I was going to be the one person who was going to get to talk to him while I was in Austin. And this student from the UT, University of Texas, came over and begged me. It's like, I need some time with Terry George. I have to talk to him. Please, can you give me some of your time? It's like, I've got an hour. I really don't want to give up my time with Terry George. But she made such a convincing argument that I said, okay, right? I'll give you 15 minutes. You're going to have to work within my setup, but I'll give you 15 minutes with Terry George if I can sit in the room and witness this. And I'm so glad I did on some level, and so sorry I did on another. And so she had the list of questions, right? And she's going through, and it's terrible. It's almost like, and your name is Terry George? Yes. And you are a filmmaker? Yes. So, and just the awful list of questions. And Terry George is a very nice man, very gracious man, and all of a sudden, because he sees that it's not a good interview, that it's not going well, he starts to offer up this amazing story about researching Hotel Rwanda. And he tells a story about going over there and being taken on tours and going into these caves and finding the calcified remains of a family, the mother and child, like stuck in the side, like we could see the machete. It was like this gruesome, overwhelming, incredibly heartbreaking story. And I was sitting there in the background with my crew, and we're all getting sort of misty during this. And like you just feel the energy change in the room. And he finishes this. And we're like, oh. And she says, so, what's it like to work with Joaquin Phoenix? And it was one of those things which may have been a little bit about nervousness, but also she simply wasn't listening. If you were really listening to that story, any human being, anybody in this room would have been not only appalled, but just riveted by this thing. But when you stop listening, when you're focusing only on what comes next, you lose out. So what are some tricks to listening better? What are some tricks to making us do exactly what Mary, Barry, Jerry talked about? The things that you can do are, one, listen to what somebody's saying, and then before you respond, try to repeat it word for word in your head. Not aloud, because that'll make you seem crazy. But in your head, once they say something, can you actually repeat it? Can you do that? It means that you take a moment. And part of it is maybe a little bit of social anxiety, that we don't want to take that time. Because I think as a culture, I feel like so many of us think we're in a game show or something. Like, I must respond immediately. Boom! I'm on the buzzer. Bam! I got an answer. Boom! I got my next question. I don't know what just everybody calm down. It's really, there's nothing to get that worked up about. And there's really something to be gained by slowing down. A little bit of slow culture, people. Right? Take some time. Hear the question. Hear the comment. Hear it beginning to end. Repeat it to yourself. Okay? So if somebody talks to me before an event, I got the great pleasure to meet Jeremy, which I'm sure everybody's met Jeremy, because you seem like somebody who would go introduce yourself to everybody in a room, and I mean that in the best of all possible ways. I got to hear Jeremy's story, but I listened to his story about where his last name, Jeremy Cox, comes from, and it's unusual because it's K-O-X, right? And then he talked about where it came from, and that his family was actually C-O-I-X, and then it was C-O-E-X, but then moving to the Netherlands, get the whole story. But you listen, and you actually glean some information from somebody. Right? But you actually have to pay attention. So in my mind, I'm not only hearing his story, but I'm actually sort of repeating it to myself because it's intriguing to me. I happen to admit that I'm a sucker for last names, and I love stories about that stuff. But whatever it is, if you repeat it, it actually sticks. The other thing to keep in mind that neuroeconomically is that we don't remember things without repeating them. So there can be all these, parlor tricks about how do I remember somebody's name, and people go like, so I go over and go like, this is Amy, and go, Amy, 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 Amy. Once again, you'll seem like a lunatic. But the big thing is just take a moment to really absorb the person and what they have to say when you're first introduced to them. I could go around this room, and if I met everybody by the end of this, I could tell you all your names except for Mary, Barry, Jerry's, in all likelihood, because now I have a block. But I could do that, but it wouldn't be because it's some gimmick. It'd be because I would grow to develop some association with each of you from listening to you, listening to your stories. Does that make sense? So once again, breaking down the habit of not rushing in, actually listening, taking time. Nathan. Well, Nathan, I don't know how you prepared your stand-up, but one of the things as a stand-up comic that's really important is finding your character and finding your voice, finding your persona. The best comics out there are ones who are presenting something that is very close to themselves, really, and that's what makes it funny. The thing is that people talk about, observational humor. It's something that we all have. No. The more specific you are to yourself as a comic, the more universal it becomes. And the same is true in conversation. The more specific I am to myself, the truer I am to myself, the more I get back in the conversation. The best compliment I ever received, in my mind, was from a friend who said that, Warren, you are more yourself in any situation than anyone I know. That it doesn't matter what circumstance you place you in, you're still you. And then a few weeks ago, I got to speak to the author, Eric Weiner, who's written a great new book, Man Seeks God. And he said, you know, you're just the same person on camera as you are off camera. He said, I've talked to all of them. No, he said, but he speaks proper English. He said, I've spoken to, you know, Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart and Jay Leno and all these folks. He said, you're the only person who is the same on camera as off camera. He said, Charlie Rose comes close, but he's arrogant. He also makes $3 million more a year than I do, but that's another. So he gets a pass on that one. But really, this idea of finding yourself, being vulnerable in conversation means a lot. Right? Finding your voice really means being honest with yourself. You don't have to go to therapy, I'm not saying that, but you have to be willing to actually join the other person there. If you want somebody to meet you in conversation, you have to meet them part way. Right? It's amazing the things that we'll ask of people without offering anything of ourselves.